Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Kavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm looking at Sqsl Lottery. Now this developer also goes under the name Sqsl, S-E-Q-S-U-A-L, or maybe Sqsl or Sexual, I don't know, however you want to pronounce it. Has done a lot of other different sequencers like Latch, Temp, Circle. There are a bunch of them. They're all interesting and they're all different in their own way. And they're things that you really need to spend time with. So I've spent a few days with this already and I just want to get a video out, and I can't sit around playing around with it for weeks before I make a video. I'd love to, but I just don't have time to. So I understand the app pretty well, but don't expect a great performance or anything here, definitely not, because I would really need to spend more time with this before I can consistently get good results with it. But I enjoy the fact that it's like that, and it kind of makes it better value for money, you know? It's something that you can actually spend a bit of time with. I always think of these apps as a little bit like some sort of puzzle game or something, you know, trying to figure them out. So, first of all, I'm just going to turn all of these clocks for these different voices off. And we're going to talk about the concept of the app. I made a couple of sound-only demos for this a few days ago. You can go and have a listen to those, especially the second one that I did, number 2. I was pretty happy with how that sounded. And then when I've been playing around with it at other times, I've had some really great little bits that happened, but I would just need to spend more time with it before I can really get to know it. Before we go on, I also just want to mention I've got a Patreon, everybody, and I just want to say a huge thank you to the people who are supporting me there. If you're a fan of this channel, it would be fantastic if you can support me on Patreon. The lowest tier only costs about the price of a pint of beer a month. I think it's really good value. Go and check it out. I'll put a link in the description. Okay, so let's just look. So here I'm looking at the website. Now, there is a manual here. I know that a lot of people find these look very simple, but a lot of people don't find them very edifying. It's basically annotated screenshots. And yeah, to be honest, I don't really think that that's always the best way to do a manual. But when you when you get a few of these apps and you kind of get used to the developer's way of thinking, they do become easier to understand. So I was a bit confused by this one initially, and I always find that's the case with his apps, but it didn't take that long to get a basic understanding. Like I said, though, I think it would take longer to really, in any way, master it. It's also an app that I think really benefits from knowing a bit of music theory. Anyway, let's talk about what this is. So if we look here, okay, we have here a typical step sequencer, okay, where there is a step index. That just means the address where it's currently at. So, you know, there it's starting on the on step 1, and then its destination is step 2. And from step 2, its destination is step 3. And it proceeds in a completely predictable way, right? That's your typical step sequencer. But if we look at this one, we can see that it's jumping around a little bit, right? Because here it's set up so that from step 5, its next destination will be step 11. So we can see it jumping from 5 to 11, and so on and so on. Okay, so that's another way we can set up a sequencer so that it does not progress consecutively. Excuse that noise in the background, by the way. That's some really noisy bird. Now, another different way that we could set up a sequencer is the way that it is set up in this app, where we've got a matrix, and the matrix, we have the index here, so that represents the current position. You know, if the playhead is here, it means it's on step 5. And then the things here, these represent different possible destinations. So if we go back to the app here, basically, if it plays, let me just put it on. I just put on one voice there. So this is playing different instruments though, by the way, because I've got it set up that it can send out on different channels. But this is a monophonic patch because I'm only sending out one voice. You can see we can have up to 5 voices. All right, so where were we? Yeah, let's just go back here. So if we look at what this is here, we can see that this is the address. So when this is lit up, it means that it's playing an E. And then what these show is different possible next destinations after the E. So the way it's set up here is that this can either go back to an E again. This is really simple. You can make it a lot more complicated. And then another option here is that it could play an A next. So you can see that's why sometimes it's jumping over here towards this A. Now, there's nothing in the A column. That means there's no destination set for it to progress to after A. So what happens then is that it will go back to this off column. When this flashes, that means there's a rest. Now, there are other ways to add in rests as well, but we'll look at that later. So that means that this is a rest. And then when we put a destination here, this is a possible destination that it can go to after it leaves the off column. So let's say I put in an F there. So you see now when it comes back to the off column, it has 2 choices. It can either go and play an E, or it can play an F. So again, when it goes and plays an E, then it's either going to play an E again, or play an A again, or it's going to come back to the off column. This is a very important thing to understand, because these things only present certain likelihoods. This one is brighter. That means it's more likely to go and play an E again. This one is less likely. We can change that with this phase slider. So you see now this is brighter, and this is not very bright at all. There's just a little dot. That means there's a very low possibility of it going back to an E now, and there's a high possibility of it going to A, which we can see here. It's jumping over here a lot more. But every time it goes to A, it's going to come back to the off column. Now let's add in a G here, for example. And so now you see G being lit up from time to time. And now I could tell it, okay, go and play a D next. So now every time it goes and plays a G, it's going to either go and play a D, and we can see the likelihood of that is not very high, or it's going to go back to the off column, and then it will go to one of these destinations, either a G, an F, or an E. If we want to increase the probability here, we have 2 choices. Either we can toggle it off and then tap it again, and you see now it's much brighter, so that means there's higher chance. Whoops. Hey, what happened there? Right, so now there's a much higher chance of it going and playing a D. So again, D, I don't have any destination selected, so when it goes to D currently, it's going to go back to the off column. There it's going to rest before it goes on to one of these destinations. But I could add some destinations here. So for example, I could tell it go and play an E, or go and play an F. Now, as you can see, also it would be possible to set it up so that the playhead gets stuck in a certain place and it just keeps repeating. So, you know, there are just so many different possibilities with this. Now let me just go back to the way this was set up. And let me change this. I'll go to the clock page and, whoops, take down the rate a little bit. Okay, so you get the idea there about how the matrix works. Now let me turn things off again. So there are a few different ways that we can turn things off. One is on this density section to just put everything to 0. So what that is doing is basically determining the probability of a voice playing. So if we have everything down at 0, then there will be no sound. If we have like all 5 of these up at 100, we're going to have 5 different voices. So we can have up to 5 notes being played at any one time, but remember there's always an element of probability involved here. Right? So you can see there those being triggered. Now if we bring things down like this, for example, now we're going to have fewer notes, because now there's only a 66% chance of each voice being triggered. And if we bring it down here, then we're going to have even fewer notes. And so, of course, we can set that up in different ways. So we already get a lot of possibilities there. Now, another thing we could do if we don't want any sound is to just turn everything off. So let me see what I've got here. EEA, okay. Okay, so now we're not going to have anything because the playhead is just staying in the off column. Why? Because we have not set any destination for the off column. And remember, every time the playhead's in the off column, we don't hear anything. That is a rest. So we can set that up just the way it was a minute ago. Or let's set it a little bit differently. So you see now, because before I had E set as a destination in the E column, that means we're going to get a lot of E notes, right? Because there's going to be more chance of E's being repeated. Now we're going to get fewer rather, because now A is the only destination here, but we're still getting a lot of E notes, right? Why is that? It's because if we look here, the chance of an A being triggered here is actually quite small. So then it's going to go back to the off column, and the only thing we've got selected is the E here. So see, now that's a little bit brighter. So we're going to get more A's. And now let's put in an F here. Let's make it a little bit more likely. doesn't sound great. Let's put in a G. Try a few different things. Bugger that. See, I told you things were going to go wrong here. This is a really different way of thinking for me, a sequencer like this. Okay, now let me just turn everything off again for a second. So, right, so that is the key section. Now, we can also press random here. Now, pay attention to what this does. So look at what we've got here. And let's press random. So you see, random is not choosing any random notes. It's only randomizing the probability of each of these. And remember, probability is reflected in the brightness. Brighter means more likelihood that it will be triggered. So that's one thing that we can do. We can just go in and randomize the probability. Now, this is really important because it will make a very big difference to how things sound. But another thing that we can do is we can adjust the phase slider here. So watch the brightness of these as I adjust this. So this phase slider is something that can be interesting to tweak when you're playing until it just comes up with something that you like. Now, before we go on, we should look at this mapping section up here. So this mapping section allows you, this is the default, okay? And there's a mapping page for all of these, and they're all set up in the same way by default. Okay, let's go back to key there. But like, for example, if we wanted something simpler, you could just set it up that, for example, here, these are both C, and then, you know, let's say we have these three steps will all be a D, and so on. Okay, so you can set it up any way you like. And that's basically kind of like, see here, it's basically quantized to a chromatic scale. But you know, by setting these up in different ways, you could quantize it to whatever scale you liked. And then when you're on the key page, there would be a lot less chance of things going wrong. So that can be useful. Now clear will just clear everything. Then, so here we set the likelihood of the keys, sorry, notes, not keys, being played. Here we set the likelihood of different octaves. So let's just play something there. So we can see that I've set in the off column 3 and 4 as possible destinations. So 3rd or 4th octave. And then here I've set different destinations, okay? So basically we're just allowing different octaves to be triggered. Now here, this one is very important. So on the clock page, you know, we set the overall speed with this rate slider. So this is super fast. And this is much slower. Now here we can divide the clock for each voice. So if we look at the way this is, voice 2 is going to be triggered half the time that voice 1 is, so we'll have voice 1 a lot more, and so on and so on. So we have 1 1 1 2 1 3 1 4 1 over 4. Down here, by the way, we can also set the swing for each voice, and we can set the gate length for each voice. So let's just bring that up. Right, so we can play around with swing. Gate length. So you can have a lot of fun playing around with those. Now back to time. So this is the fastest duration, or sorry, well, let me just let you hear. Whoops. Let's change this in here. So let's change it, for example. So you see, you know, this is 4 times slower than a value of 1. So we could, you can do a lot of interesting rhythmic stuff here, but I really would need to spend more time with this. So you see, we can also set up the likelihood of different things here. So we could set it up that, for example, this is where the off column sends to. And then here we could send, when the playhead arrives here, we could choose 2 here, in which case it will send it over here. And that's going to slow things down a little bit. And then, for example, here we could send it from here over to 4. And here, for example, we could add maybe 2 different options here. So that now when it comes back to the off column, it will either go to a 1 or a 2. So just remember that this is half the speed of this. This is 1/3 the speed of this, and so on and so on. These ones are rests. So these ones are very, very long rests. So when they get triggered, it's going to stop producing sound for quite a long time. These are much shorter rests. Here again, we set our probability for different velocities. And this is a really important one. So here we set the probability for different channels to be triggered. So you can see that at the moment it's kind of prioritizing channel 1, which is this vibraphone. So we could change that. Now, one way we could do that is with the phase slider. So you see now there's going to be a bit more likelihood of channel 2 being triggered, which is this concert harp. Okay, so you can think there's all kinds of different things that you could do there. And then over here, we can, excuse me, set a semitone offset for each voice. Now remember, only 3 voices are being triggered at the moment. So now every time voice 3 is triggered, it's going to be 5 semitones higher than whatever the value on the main screen that triggers it is. So let's say an F triggers here. Well, it's going to play an A sharp on that voice because we've set it to play 5 semitones up from there. And so we also have octave offset here. Note that these are lowering the octaves. So these are increasing the semitone value. These are lowering the octave value. So we could have, and now remember again, we're only hearing the first 3 voices, and you can always see that by what's being lit up. So we could have everything super deep. Or higher, or a mix. And we can also offset the channel. So if we do that, we're gonna get let's see what's happening there. So yeah, basically now for voice 1, if the app, if the main screen, if this screen tells it to play on channel 1, this one is going to play on channel 1, but this one, when it gets a message to play on channel 1, it's going to play on channel 2 instead. If it's like this, it's going to play on channel 3 instead. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to leave it there because, like I say, I really like this, and I think in my little musical demos that I posted the other day, especially the second one, I really liked it. But I feel like there's just too much that can go wrong with me performing with this at the moment, so I'm not going to try and wow you with any cool performance. But go and listen to those if you haven't yet. I do really like this a lot. I think it's very interesting. I just say a little few things to finish off here. And please smash the like, everyone, and comment as well if you haven't. And as I said earlier, if you can join the Patreon, even better. But yeah, at least, you know, just give the video a like if it was useful for you. Write a comment, you know, help the algorithm spread this video around a little bit more. So let's just look at what I like and any criticisms that I might have. So I think the concept is very interesting. It's different, definitely, and it's something that will really suit people who think a lot about different notes. Now, I'm, you know, not really that kind of person. You know, most of my background is in playing rhythm guitar, and really just, you know, having learned chord shapes, and like I always played guitar as an accompaniment to my voice, you know, writing my own songs and stuff like that. So I, you know, learned these different chord shapes, experimented, you know, playing around with hammering things on and off and so on, little variations. But a lot of the time I never really thought very much about what notes I'm playing. So a sequencer like this is a bit challenging for me. But for some people, they'll feel really, really at home with something like that. But I enjoy the challenge. And like I said earlier, you can always remap things so that it's going to be a bit more idiot-proof. So, you know, you could just put in value, you know, C's, D's, E's, F's, G's, whatever here, you know, just get a C major scale. And then a lot less would be likely to go wrong. So yeah, I think it's very interesting. It's really different. And I always enjoy this developer's UIs. I think they're just very pretty. And I mean, especially when, you know, stuff's playing here. I just love watching the playheads move around and stuff. It's beautiful. I feel like this developer spends a lot of time thinking about his, you know, thinking about different interesting things to do with MIDI. So the UIs on the apps look similar, and there's definitely some crossover. but they will all push you in certain different directions. And they are a little bit like, it feels like a puzzle game, kind of. So I feel like you could spend a lot of time with each one of these sequencers, just experimenting with it and getting familiar with it. And I just like the aesthetic of these apps. I love the look of these UIs. I think the apps are beautiful. But what I don't like is, whoops. Oh yeah, that's another thing, by the way. If you double tap on the right, it can turn into an erase thing, so I could erase this preset if I wanted to. Didn't mention that earlier. These also are different pages for the preset system, so if you fill this grid, then you can just move on to page 2. But yeah, look, you know, honestly, like, this is a very, very unsatisfactory preset saving solution for me in 2024. I want to be able to save presets with goddamn names, honestly. It really aggravates me. Also, the lack of AUV3 I think is a huge pity. Now, if you're just someone who's using your iPad to send MIDI to hardware or desktop, you don't care about that. But for musicians who are working on iOS, most of them care a lot about that. You know, normally, if we use a MIDI sequencer, well, we can set it up in a way that we like, and it can be hosted inside the host app like AUM. And when we save the session, we can save that MIDI sequencer in there with all its settings set up exactly the way that we want it. But with this app, we can't. And I mean, basically, if I wanted, let's say I came up with something that I really liked. When I open up this app and fire the MIDI at it, I'm going to have to remember which square on here is going to trigger the preset that I want. So, you know, I'm going to have to go in and like write down, okay, I don't know, you know, page 1, you know, first row, column 4 or whatever. You know, that's annoying. So yeah, like people rightly complain about these not being AUV3, but at the same time, I am really glad that, you know, someone is doing instruments like this that feel like you know, something different, something original, and that create a performance surface, you know, on the iPad screen. Like, there are just so many apps for iPad these days that are just either they're straight ports from desktop, or they are you know, just like they're only available on iPad or often iPhone as well, but not always. But they're designed completely within the same paradigm as desktop plugins or hardware. And you know, I just think that's a real pity. So I do like these. They're interesting. You know, they feel like instruments, and it's enjoyable to work with these on a touch screen. But at the same time, like, not having there's no Ableton Link or anything like that, so you're not going to be able to jam live with this on top of say a drum machine or whatever playing in here. For me personally, I don't really care that much, because I feel that I like minimalist setups, and I like ambient and drone and that kind of thing, and I don't even really use percussion very much, so I don't personally care that much about that, but I definitely understand that for a lot of people that is a big thing. But at the same time, look, you also have to think, remember that, you know, we have the like ability to very flexibly set the rate inside the app and stuff like that. So I mean, if it was Ableton Link, I don't know. Well, I suppose this still could be sending out on Ableton Link. It could just be the master. So yeah, I don't know. I would like to see a bit more connectivity. Again, doesn't really matter for people who are using this to control their hardware, or just sending out the MIDI to desktop apps. But for people on the iPad, it is an issue. And I've seen plenty of people saying, I'm not gonna buy these apps because they're not AUV3. People really do care about this. Now, sure, the UI would be a little bit smaller, but not really actually, because I mean, like, look, that can take up almost the full screen there. And, you know, there's space around here. So yeah, I think it's a pity, you know, that these are not AUV3. It would be a lot more convenient. And I think also for Miso, the developer, he would sell a lot more copies of these to iOS musicians. But I don't know, maybe the market is big enough, just even among people who are using their iPad to send MIDI to desktop or hardware. I don't know. I can't imagine that's a huge market either. But anyway, it is what it is. I still like these apps. I really enjoy them. I would use them more if I could save them inside my host as an AUV3. Okay, I hope that was useful for you, everyone. I'll see you in the next video.